Hello and welcome to another episode of a weekly waypoint. Today we are playing Wipeout HD, specifically the version of Wipeout HD that exists in the Omega Collection on PS4, base PS4 if you're wondering. I didn't go in for any of that PS4 Pro business, okay? Mostly because I couldn't afford to at the time and it was already nearing the end of the console cycle. But for those of you unaware, Wipeout HD was originally a Vita game, and when ported alongside Wipeout 2048 onto PS4, they were coupled together and called the Omega Collection. Wipeout HD itself collects tracks from Wipeout Pure and Wipeout Pulse and gives them a good old lick of paint. And if the Omega Collection is anything to go by, it also applies Wipeout Pulse's approach to the campaign in terms of layout and like selecting events instead of just your bog standard championship to the Wipeout Pure tracks as well. In fact, Wipeout HD pretty much just like combines Wipeout Pure and Pulse's track selection when you're doing these events. They're not like separated in any meaningful way, and I think that's fine because Wipeout Pure and Wipeout Pulse had very similar gameplay to begin with. I'm no expert, but I believe they pretty much stuck with the Wipeout Pulse way of doing things in terms of ship feel and weapons, but I'm sure they tweaked it as well. Now, not to spoil how I feel about Wipeout HD within the Omega Collection, but you've already seen this video's title, you know that I absolutely bloody love it. And it's funny because I got Wipeout Omega Collection years ago, back when I got my PlayStation VR headset, and yes, I've played some of this in VR and it's a pretty good time, but I treated it like I treated every other Wipeout game that I've ever played. That's neat. And I played it for a few hours and I put it away. Yet over the course of this retrospective, which isn't done by the way, we've still got 2048 to do next week, having gone back and spent a decent amount of time in every single Wipeout title thus far, I've really grown to love and appreciate this series in a way that I assume all true fans of a series do. I legitimately wish I had put more time into this series from a younger age. But I also kind of think that this style of racing might skew to an older audience anyway. Just, I don't know, I just got a feeling. I've just got that gut feeling. Logic would dictate that younger people have faster reaction times, so maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like Wipeout skews older. Maybe that's just because these games were at their most popular during the late 90s and early 2000s, and us folk who were around back then, we've got a little bit older now. Some of us are developing grey hairs. Not me, not yet. Now, of course, just like with every video before, I've had to disable the music so that I don't get hit with a algorithm demoting copyright strike. And at first I thought this is weird because this is the game I've been playing the most alongside Wipeout Pure. I mean, it is also just kind of Wipeout Pure, but it has its own soundtrack. And it's weird playing this without the soundtrack. The soundtrack, by the way, I don't think it's the strongest in the series in Omega Collection, sadly. But it's still nice to have them nonetheless. But very quickly I adapted to the silence, and I realised it helped me appreciate the sound design all the more, because while the sound design throughout all of the Wipeout games has been pretty solid, I feel like in Omega Collection, or at least in Wipeout HD included within the Omega Collection, which is a mouthful, I feel like they really nailed it. The variation on the ship sounds as the engine whirs up and slows down and you hit walls and you grind against enemies is sublime. It calls to mind those quieter sections in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Stay with me, I know Star Wars Pod Racer or whatever it's called is a thing. Maybe we should go and visit that game. I'm still not sure if we're going to keep doing Wipeout adjacent games after this retrospective or give them a break. But you know those scenes when Anakin's like battling against Sebulba and John Williams takes a bit of a breather for a minute and it's just the engine noises, and it really hammers home the visceral nature and the danger involved in this high-speed racing, and it really sells you that fantasy. That's the kind of vibe I got from this. Not particularly this race. The first few races I just ended up in first all the time, which wasn't quite as exciting. I did have the opponents on medium difficulty, and we get some more interesting races a little bit later. But it really helped me realise that Wipeout HD, as included within the Omega Collection, really sells the fantasy that I think Wipeout's been trying to get at for a while. Oh, I went American there. Just this high-speed, high-stakes, super dangerous anti-gravity racing Ah, I love it so much. But if you recall, I also said very glowing things about Wipeout Pure and Wipeout Pulse, so how does Wipeout HD, as included within the Omega Collection, stack up against these titles? Oh, listen to me, I'm doing my YouTuber voice and everything. Well, I think it's a pretty undeniable upgrade. I'm struggling to find flaws within the HD version that are not present within the PSP versions of the games. And the thing I've settled on is track texture. Maybe not this one's fine, but there are some track textures where I just kind of feel like some of the character of the track itself has been taken away by an almost more generic texture than was intended. Even more base than that, just looking at the texture of some of these tracks, I feel like they would feel rough and coarse to run my hand across. And I don't know why, but I don't like that for a Wipeout track. I prefer them to be a little bit more smooth. And also, as you can see with these pulse anti-gravity, or I guess magnetic portions of the tracks, they've added this electromagnetic looking texture which wasn't really there before. I'm a little bit torn on that. I don't know whether I love it or whether I'm ambivalent about it. It's definitely a stronger indication that I'm currently sideways as you're watching this. But I also kind of like the subtler version of that found in the previous PSP title. But I really am nitpicking here, I'm really clutching at straws. I think it's hard to deny that Wipeout HD is a superior version of these PSP games. I will always love the PSP aesthetic for any PSP game, just like the simplistic, low polygon, but better than PS1 looking aesthetic that PSP games have, and for that reason I will always love the look of Wipeout Pure and Wipeout Pulse themselves, but it's also really fun to have raced on those tracks before and to see them rendered here in high definition with extra glowy bits. And I don't know if the video is going to run on long enough for me to get to the last 4 tracks, which I believe are part of a Wipeout Fury expansion, which I had yet to really play, but they look super duper gorgeous. Also worth mentioning, I believe the online multiplayer servers for this game are still up. I just don't currently have PlayStation Plus. Also, I don't know if I would have done online matches because I don't know if that would have been as uniformly representative of the gameplay as I've been going through them. But one last thing I'd like to address is I'm clearly sat here going, oh, this is my favourite Wipeout experience. I think it's safe to say that, right? Obviously, I already said Wipeout Pure is my most played. I was really enjoying it back when I made that video. I think this is, by the way, this is what I mean about the track textures. I think this is a better version of Wipeout Pure, and I think it is ultimately my favorite Wipeout game. It is ultimately my favorite Wipeout experience, maybe even including games like Redout and Ballistic NG and all that. But I know, I'm not new to the internet, I know that there are going to be some purists out there, and that's fine. If you prefer the PS1 games, I totally understand that, because as I've mentioned in previous videos, while I think the modern Wipeout experience is a really freaking good one, and I think it's perfected here in the Omega Collection, I also understand that it's still not quite what Wipeout originally was, and that's fine, it doesn't have to be, but in having this super refined, I guess, handling and super it's a little bit more approachable, it's less punishing when you hit walls and stuff, but also in terms of visuals, because it's more high fidelity, it's a little bit less dark and ambiguously dark and neon and stuff like that. Wipeout, specifically Wipeout 1 and its sequel, 2097 or XL depending where you live, I think have a very specific vibe to them, and I don't think they ever quite recapture that. And yeah, I can understand it if you prefer the PS1 games. I still love them, I will still go back and play them. Also, it's worth mentioning, I like that experience hasn't been perfectly recreated in modern games, because it also means that there's value in going back and re-experiencing the very originals. And so while I can enjoy Wipeout HD as it is included within the Omega Collection to my heart's content, I can also be I want a bit of a different experience, and I can go back and I can play Wipeout 1 or Wipeout 2097 or Wipeout 3, those games which I've already played earlier in this retrospective series. Anyway, That's almost a full 10 minutes dedicated to Wipeout, so I think I'm going to put a pin in that one. Again, it's not the end of a retrospective, although there were a lot of wrap-up thoughts with this one, I know. Next week we will be playing Wipeout 2048, as included within the Wipeout Omega collection, but I'm now going to move on to talking about, games I've played this week and other things which interest me. Firstly, I want to talk about the main game which has been eating up all of my time and attention this week, and it's a game I've been playing for a few weeks, but my fervour for it just continues to grow and grow and grow, and that is No Man's Sky. Please don't tell Sean Murray I've been playing this. After all, men are not allowed to go to the sky, but I've been being a cheeky little man rebel and playing it anyway. This week I really got stuck into the expedition, which I was holding back on because me and my friends did have some plans to play it, but it's a little tough to get us all together playing the same thing. And I jumped the gun. I was the friend who I'm never gonna get this stuff otherwise. I have never finished an expedition in No Man's Sky, probably because of my bad attention span, but I feel like I just haven't been around for most of them anyway. And so I abandoned the safety of my happy little relaxed mode save where I don't have to worry too much about resources, etc., and jumped into Liquidators and started blasting abominations and fiends and terrors and whatever they're called. For those of you who do not know, No Man's Sky, the space exploration game, has seasonal expeditions which kind of change up the way the game plays, but most importantly gives you a whole bunch of mission objectives to do. Think like Diablo 3 and 4 style seasonal objectives to chase, which give you kind of like gameplay boosting rewards as you go. And of course, because it's No Man's Sky, it does not charge you, there's no optional currencies involved, it's all free if you own a game. For God's sake, Sean Murray, let us give you money. And I don't know that I've got anything specific to report in terms of my gameplay and the expedition. I've just been falling deeper and deeper down a rabbit hole and falling more and more in love with this game, which I really loved. I feel like every single time they update that game, I love it even more, and it's crazy because I liked it back when I first played it in 2017 after it had received its first year of updates, and people were starting to go, hey, No Man's Sky might be worth playing now. And it feels like every time there's been a major update since then, people have gone, wow, they finally made up for the mess of the launch. No Man's Sky is now worth playing, and I feel like we gotta stop saying that because we're far past that. No Man's Sky isn't just worth playing now, it's, in my opinion, one of the best games ever made at this point. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic saying that because I've sunk nearly 200 hours into this game across multiple platforms at this point, across many different years, across many different iterations of a game, and it didn't always used to be one of the best games ever made. It's just slowly got up to that point in my esteem. Last time I sunk a great deal of time into No Man's Sky, I was happy to say that it was one of my favourite games at that point, but now I'm sitting here like it's absolutely one of the best games I have ever played, and I don't know how it can get any better. I mean, I take that back, I do know how it could get better. They could add like some cavern updates, because right now caverns are still a little bit shallow. They could always go make some steps towards making some better like civilizations. I know we've got outposts and stuff now, and maybe they will, but if they never update the game again, I think I would still find tens if not hundreds of hours to sink into it. It's so immersive, it's so immensely rewarding. I recently did a blog post over on kritigri.wordpress.com, just kind of going a little bit more in depth into like my latest surge of appreciation I'm having for this game. If you want to read more in kind of a more like a sit down and think of the words to say kind of a way. But I'm sure you've seen No Man's Sky popping up in my miscellaneous shenanigans videos over and over again. I think it's going to be a mainstay of that series for a fairly long time to come. Since No Man's Sky is a relatively small game, it's like 18 gigabytes or something, I don't see myself uninstalling it ever again because I feel like I'm constantly uninstalling it and regretting it a week later because they've just dropped another update or started another expedition, and that's why I'm not always hanging around for all of these different updates and expeditions. With my return to PC gaming for No Man's Sky, that makes it sound like I came back to PC gaming purely for No Man's Sky. What I'm trying to say is this return to No Man's Sky is the first time where I've gone, oh right, I've got a decent PC now, I might as well play it here because it'll run the best over here. And now I'm like, oh, I just want to keep my relaxed save mode as like my main save and just work on one save file, because I've got a few different like 40 plus hour save files across different platforms, but there's still so much I've never actually done. I've never settled down on a planet and like fully catalogued everything and fully like, you know, got my base up and running with all the different things in it you can do, or like got an outpost and put all the time you can put into that. I've never put all the things you can put into a freighter and do all the missions and get super involved in that. There's still so many avenues I could fully go down, but I feel like because I'm constantly starting new saves, I never quite get that deeply invested in any single save file, and I would like to change that. I'm in the middle of like the 4th phase of the Liquidators expedition right now, and I feel like when I finish it I'm going to go back to my relaxed save mode and really start plugging away on that save. But also in recent weekly waypoints I've talked a lot about the coziness of just having your favourite games remain installed, and therefore even if you don't play them for months, you know, they're just like a couple of clicks away. And that just feels so inherently cozy to me in a way I can't quite explain, and I think No Man's Sky is one of the best games to have in that kind of cozy, always installed kind of a mode. Of course, we'll see how I feel about this when my fixation on the game wears off and suddenly I don't really care about it anymore, but right now, like, literally, if I die tomorrow, just upload my consciousness to No Man's Sky, that'd be fine. I'm sure we've got that technology lying around somewhere, right? Wait, wasn't that a Black Mirror episode? Another game, which I have been sinking a decent amount of time into this week, has been World of Warcraft, specifically the War Within pre-patch. Now you might be thinking, Christian, I am an avid watcher of the Weekly Waypoint and remain fully retentioned the entire time. You spoke about World of Warcraft last week, and it seemed like the pre-patch had already hit. What is different this week? Well, this week, the pre-patch really started. For a few reasons. Firstly, as I believe I mentioned last week as well, one of the main features of the whole warband thing is the bank system, and that was disabled because it was broken. But they re-enabled it. It works now, so I've managed to see how that works, and I've managed to afford free tabs, and those tabs do have a fair amount of room in each one, which is pretty fun. And so I've been logging on to all of my various alts and consolidating gold and consolidating resources. Consolidation is the thing of the moment. It's the word of the hour. I'm consolidating my conglomeration of cooperative cohorts. That makes sense on a surface level, don't think about it too much. You might think that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but when you've played World of Warcraft for thousands of hours and you have 51 characters, it was pretty goddamn fun to me. That's not all though. This week saw them kicking off the pre-patch quest series, which is mildly interesting so far, and it also saw us kicking off the event, which was broken and boring at first, but very quickly patched and updated to be something worth doing. You've got these hourly cycles of these radiant memory events, which, you know, it's nothing groundbreaking. You just kind of farm little like world quest style objectives to make the boss spawn, and then you hit the boss and he poops out some currency and you go, sweet, poop, and you spend it on new things like mounts and transmog and catch-up gear, which is also the transmog, and pets and stuff. Also, it turns out that this is a decent way to level alts, and you might be thinking, but I thought Mists of Pandaria time running was a good way to level alts. You could literally hit level 70 in 3 hours, and that is true, but you have to make brand new characters to do that. Whereas with this, you can level up your pre-existing characters, which you've had for years, which have fallen behind as the level cap has increased and squished down. So a character you've already leveled up to like level 100 is now like level 50 and looking like you never finished leveling him in the first place, and suddenly half of his rotation that you used to being able to do isn't even unlocked anymore. Yeah, it got a little bit weird. It's not the most fun way to level alts, I'll admit, because, you know, while there are gear drops, they're a little bit few and far between, and the way scaling works in the game nowadays, you just end up kind of being around to tickle the bosses while everyone else does all the real damage and try not to die, and then get a whole great big chunk of XP that you don't feel like you earned. However, it's a decent enough time for someone who has spent thousands of hours in the game and has had a worse time in the past. I'm hoping to get my final 4 classes, which are not already max level, up to max level before the expansion drops at the end of the month while doing this event, because it's nice to be able to level alts and also farm currency and catch-up gear at the same time. And with the way the warband system works, I don't know why I hesitated mid-word. With the way the warband system works now, with sharing gear tokens more easily and sharing currency, it just feels that much nicer. It feels like I am progressing an account instead of individual characters with weirdness in between. Oh good lord, he's actually going to talk his way up to a nearly half an hour long video, isn't he? Yes he is. Let's keep going. A game which I have played before but recently got an Xbox release is a free-to-play gacha game. Christian, what are you doing playing a free-to-play gacha game? You hate those things, yes I know. But listen, it's Bleach Brave Souls, and I love Bleach, and Bleach Brave Souls is not the worst gacha game I have ever seen, at least not with the time I've sunk into it, so let's give you some history. Wait, was that enough of a transition? Are people going to be confused? We're talking about Bleach Brave Souls now, not World of Warcraft. I played a little bit of Bleach Brave Souls on Steam, and to be entirely clear, I never spent any money on it, and I am lucky enough to not fall prey to gacha mechanics. At least I've never done so far, and I don't foresee myself doing so. Furthest I tend to go down a microtransaction hole is the occasional skin in Fortnite. I did some Overwatch loot boxes back in a day. I don't think I ever had a satisfying or exciting experience out of that. Anyway, yeah, I played a little bit of Bleach Brave Souls on Steam a few years ago, but when I changed PCs, for some reason my cloud save file didn't work properly, and I lost all my progress, which, you know, good thing I didn't put any fucking money into it, isn't it? Also, there was some ruminations about spyware being included with the PC version of the game, so look out for that if you're gonna download it. It's probably just people being paranoid at anti-cheat stuff, but it might not be, so do your research. But yeah, when I heard it was going to be released on Xbox, I was like, sure, I'll do it for achievements, why not? And yeah, as far as, I mean, I'm not an expert on gacha games, but as far as what I've heard about gacha games, this seems pretty generous, and I don't think it's just like the, you know, oh, you're brand new to the game, we're going to give you a bunch of stuff. There is a certain amount of that for sure, and you know, they give you like, oh, for the first 5 days you can pull some pretty crazy characters, but also just from what I've seen of like monthly login, daily login bonuses and stuff, it seems fairly generous, and they have events on and stuff which seem fairly generous. But the main thing is, I'm not going into this expecting to ever be competitive. I'm never going to do any of the PvP game modes trying to be competitive or anything like that. I'm never going to try and compete with people or get very far in whatever end game looks like. I'm just here to experience the campaign mode of a story and to see which characters I can get with my free draws, and when it stops feeling rewarding, I'm just going to uninstall it. Again, caveat, I am in a position mentally where I am able to do that. Other people might not be. In which case, if you feel like you might not be able to do that, I would not recommend this game, because it does have the bells and whistles attached for, ooh, the brain tinglies feel good because I pressed this button. It has all the predatory practices of your typical gacha game. Is it gacha or gacha? Gaka? It's gacha. Don't overthink it. But yeah, I got like a 6-star fully leveled up Nelil, and I got like a 6-star fully leveled up Zaraki Kenpachi, and I got a 6-star not leveled up at all Ichigo, and they've been my team for like doing the daily quests and stuff, and then I've just been keeping like a low level team to just run through the campaign, because the campaign is basically a retelling of Bleach's story. Not perfectly, they do it through like, you know, visual novel looking 2 characters talking with a text bubble with the occasional screenshot of a show, and it's heavily truncated, so I would not recommend it being your first way to experience the story that is Bleach. But as someone who has read through the manga and watched through the anime, yeah, it's a fun way to re-experience that story. Similarly to how Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm, or whatever it's called, was a great way of reliving that story through a video game. And it seems like a fairly easy 1000 gamer score. The main problem is the Brave Battles, which is that kind of semi-PvP, but not really. You're just going up against other people's compositional battle teams, but because of the crazy characters I got given at the start, I'm just one-shotting everyone. So it's just going to be a really boring grind to do it over and over and over and over again. But I might do it for gamer score. Or more specifically, to be like, hey, I really like Bleach. Look at one of my few 1000 out of 1000 gamer score games. It's a Bleach game. I know nobody cares, but it's fun to accomplish for myself. One last video game, I played a game called Flock. Not the one you're thinking of, that's probably the Xbox 360 title where you have to herd sheep around. For whatever reason, that's been removed from the Xbox Marketplace and you can no longer buy it, which is a shame. Also, the 360 digital marketplace in general shut down last week. F in the chat for that. I wish I didn't say that in such a memey way, that is a genuinely sad thing. Game preservation is in shambles, and I wish people took it a little bit more seriously. But anyway, this Flock is available on Xbox Game Pass, and it is a cute little indie game where you fly around on a bird and you identify various creatures, which are unlike any of the creatures that we have in the real world, and you identify which ones they are by their traits and what you see them doing in the world, and then you can also charm them and have them follow you around, and it's very much one of those wholesome, cute little indie games which is worth your time if you want to smile. If you are curious, I will have some footage of that coming up in a future miscellaneous shenanigans whenever I make a new one of those. But I want to shout out more indie games. I want to check out more indie games, especially since I have Game Pass and I kind of underutilize it, I feel like, these days. So yeah, there's that. And then the last thing I want to talk about today, I know he's still going, is writing, which I talk about occasionally. For those of you who do not know, I am a writer. I wish to become a published writer one day of novels or maybe poetry. All my life I've been a little writey boy scrawling away them little tales in a notepad or a virtual notepad. But I think probably due to ADHD I find it very, very, very difficult to stick to any longer story long enough to finish it. I've tried a few different approaches over the years to get myself to sit down and write more often, and my latest approach is I've decided that I'm going to take the self-employment route. I'm going to make it a job. I was listening to Brandon Sanderson's Intentionally Blank podcast the other day where they were talking about video games, and he talks about how, you know, he doesn't have a whole lot of time to play video games because, like, the bulk of his time is spent writing, and he has a mandate to write, and, like, he knows that if he sinks too much time into Magic the Gathering, he will, you know, spend too much time gaming and not enough time creating. And it made me kind of, like, stop and reassess my balance of free time and how I spend it and stuff. And so I've decided that I'm going to start small, okay? Fridays are my writing days, and it's not even like the entire day, but I'm gonna make it so that every Friday I sit down and it doesn't have to be the same project at first anyway. It can just be like writing related things. What do I want to work on today? As long as every week I'm writing, that will be a massive improvement on what I'm currently doing, which is like maybe once every few months at best. And to facilitate this, I have created a spreadsheet with tick boxes and things that change color depending on how much time I spend on any given Friday writing, and a little text box to say what I worked on and how many words I wrote and that kind of thing. And yeah, I've only done one Friday so far, so who knows how well it's going to go in the long run, but I felt very good about myself after my first Friday. Currently in a stage of life where I'm trying to break out of certainties of like, oh, can't do X because Y. Instead, replacing those thought processes with, haven't tried Z, let's try Z. And you might think, why don't you try Z more often? And the answer is anxiety. But I've just completed a whole bunch of therapy for that, and that's probably why I am where I am. So hey, if you've ever wondered if therapy works, join me and we'll find out together. So yeah, I'm not promising that I'm gonna have novels coming out my ass every year, or anything like that, but even if all it ends up being is just like self-esteem and self-fulfillment that comes with writing and honing that skill that I actually have in life, it will be a net positive. The main thing I've got to wrestle with now is, you know, I've got to start keeping short stories to myself and trying to actually get them out there to like publishers and stuff instead of posting them up on my blog. But every time I finish a short story, I'm so chuffed with it, I just want to share it with people. So I need to like discipline myself to be a little bit more self-selling instead of, you know, just immediately, hey, look at this thing I wrote, I'm so pleased with it. They're products, Christian. Your stories are products and you must sell them. Anyway, bloody hell, it's been a bit of a longer one this week, hasn't it? This is the longest weekly waypoint I've ever done. There you go, there's a fun statistic. I just felt like Wipeout HD, as presented in the Omega Collection, deserved it, you know? And it helps that I had a decent amount of stuff to talk about this week. So thank you for joining me. I hope your week went well, and I hope your next week will go even better. See you in the next one.